Scott McLean has become something of a fixture on Truthonomics, and he's here again today. Welcome back, Scott.
Hi, Jeff.
Today's topic has to do with the number 2. The magic number.
The magic number 2.
So,
what is the magic number 2? Are you asking me, or do you want me to tell you?
Well, we were inspired to cover this topic by an article in the New York Times about the arbitrary nature of this 2% inflation target. First off, maybe for the benefit of the viewers, we can give a bit of background. I mean, why are we talking about the 2% and what it means to us who live here in Japan? Scott, can you maybe get started with that?
Well, since Shinzo Abe became Prime Minister of Japan, one of the big objectives of Abenomics was to create 2% inflation. And, I think a lot of people probably assume that this idea that 2% inflation is the best outcome possible comes from some kind of, detailed computer simulations of economies and massive amounts of research over decades of how the economy should function. But the reality is, it's not that. I mean, that's what you're going to say, right? Exactly.
Because I think a lot of people said they probably heard the government announcement about 2% inflation, and they assumed that it had something to do with some sort of scientific formula or something. Mm-hmm. What is the reality? Well,
the reality is, as that article you mentioned states, that this idea really came in from the Bank of New Zealand in the 1990s, and now it's a little bit opposite situation, that they were having inflation, and they were trying to find a kind of a Goldilocks figure that would sound good and make it look like they were doing their jobs, but it's just a number they pulled out of a hat. Now, a couple of decades later, we have this same thing in Japan, only on a kind of coming at it from a reverse angle, from a deflationary situation.
They pulled the number out of a hat.
Yeah, lots of numbers come out.
I think they were actually looking at several figures. They considered 0, and they considered maybe 5%, and they said, well, let's do 2%. And apparently the parliamentarians who voted on it were eager to take a break for Christmas, right? So they just said, what the hey, just make it 2%.
Now, the other thing to remember is why the 2% target became such a mantra in Japan. At the time, there were people, and there were some quite respected people you could read on the internet who were quite interested and quite excited that maybe Abenomics is going to start to turn the tide of how central banks are operated. Because remember, Abe had threatened to remove the independence of the Bank of Japan at one point.
He sort of has, in a sort of de facto kind of way, hasn't he?
Because he put his man in charge. And it goes down to the old turf war in Japan between the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Japan. And when he became Prime Minister, or was becoming Prime Minister, it was Shirokawa, who was the head of the Bank of Japan. And he had not been able to hit a 1% inflation target. And Abe said, well, you have to increase your target. And he said, I can't do it. It's not possible. So the solution was to
raise the target.
This target that could not be reached, the solution was to double it and put Kuroda, who comes from the Ministry of Finance, in charge.
Now, the rationale behind a 2% inflation target is something like once you get prices rising at 2% a year, it means that workers, or I should say consumers, and just regular folks like you and I, are going to spend more.
Yeah.
What do you think of that premise?
Oh, it's dubious. Now, well, first off, like we could say that what they're really saying when they want you to spend more, as I said previously, is you have to reduce, you want the public to reduce their savings rate, or you want the public to borrow more money. Now, remember, these are the same people who increase the consumption tax, thereby removing the ability of people to consume. But now they want to make them consume.
I think we've already covered what an idiotic decision the raising of the consumption tax was. So we don't, for this episode, we don't have to plunge into that issue. But anyway,
but I'm saying so that if you want people to reduce savings or dip into savings, you're getting into this same area that you will turn around in the next article. The next expert is talking about this massive government debt, and as the savings rate is plummeting, and this is going to collapse the Japanese bond market. So their solution is to fix the problem. They want to do what they say in the next breath, what they say is going to cause a catastrophe. Or people can borrow more money. The problem is that people aren't borrowing money. So the idea is that you're going to fix the problem by making the problem go away.
What essentially is the problem with Japan's problem with insufficient domestic demand? I mean, what's causing it? Because a lot of these people say it's because prices are so low, there's deflation, and so it doesn't put consumers sort of in the mood to buy things, because in the expectation that, you know, if they buy something now, then like 6 months down the road, that product will be cheaper, so they put off their purchases, right?
Yeah.
So if that's not the case, what is the case? I mean, what is making consumers hold back on their purchasing?
Well, what is making consumers hold back? Well, a number of reasons. The primary reason that people don't buy something is not because they're waiting for the price to change. It's because they can't afford it. Now, for example, take you for example. Do you have a car?
No.
No. Now, when I knew you in Canada, you had a car. Why don't you have a car now?
It's a regulatory thing, because the cost of owning and running a car in Japan is artificially high, right?
Okay, so you're saying that the reason that you don't have a car is not because you're waiting for the price to come down. That's what you're saying.
No, I know, yeah. Well, yeah, indeed. I mean, the thing is, if this sort of theory was right, then just about every technology device would never be sold, or would sell in very small numbers, because we all know that, you know, a new electronic product comes out, the price goes down.
That's the old line. If the theory of inflationary expectations was correct, nobody would have bought a computer in the last 30 years.
Where would Apple be?
Yeah, as you know, I once paid 285,000 yen for a computer in Akihabara, and I wasn't waiting for the price to come down. The question is, how long are you going to wait? The other thing is, this is the only. Okay, you have the three kinds of goods. You have the affordability issue, where it doesn't matter what the inflation rate is, you can't buy it. Inflation has already happened, you're priced out of the market. Second, you have necessities, right? Nobody says, I'm going naked today because clothes will be cheaper next month.
I'm going to put off food for a week.
I'm going to put off food for a week because I think prices are going down. Okay, these are things that on a daily basis or on a week-to-week basis you have to buy, regardless of the price. Okay. Sure, there are some things where, yeah, maybe people are going to wait. Okay, I think refrigerators are going down, or I think computers are going down. But nobody waits forever. Yeah.
So what would you do if you were the governor of the Bank of Japan, and assuming that you had complete independence from the government?
My approach would be what many people say should be done, would be the original purpose of quantitative easing, QE, which is to get money into the real economy. Instead of just shuffling dead money around in the financial system.
How do you get the money into the real economy?
You print you type numbers on a computer keyboard, and you mark up people's accounts, and then they go and spend it.
Isn't that what the bank is doing right now?
No. No.
But they've expanded the monetary base by an unprecedented amount, haven't they?
What they have done is stopped people from taking existing money and depositing it into Japanese government bond accounts, and they said you can't put your money here. The money already exists for the obvious reason: if you bought the bond, you must have had the money first. So when they do the QE, they buy the bonds off people, which, as has been stated and shown by people much smarter than me, basically puts you right back in the same position as if you never sold the bond. Or what they do now is basically they don't even, I guess technically it goes to a dealer and they buy it, but they don't even bother letting people hold the bond for a while, get some interest. They just all scoop it up into the Bank of Japan. So this money that before was being put into government bonds, now it's people have it. and it creates a hot potato effect where, okay, I can't buy a bond, or the company, the bank will invest it in some kind of asset. But eventually it all cycles back, and it's just a bank deposit. It's trapped in the system.
Well, the government now is sort of in a campaign to get Japanese individuals to shift out of bonds and into stocks. But they're also doing that for the big institutions, right?
Yeah, which boosts the asset prices.
And that'll make our pensions more secure.
No.
You don't think so?
No connection whatsoever.
Now, oil prices, that's a big issue, right? Because that's kind of screwing around with the government's inflation plans, because it's actually bringing prices down, cost of living, and for both individuals as well as for businesses.
Yeah, well, I think it's because the whole idea of 2% inflation is taken as some kind of gospel, as a necessary thing. And they make no distinction between what's called cost push inflation and demand pull inflation. And if oil prices and energy prices are going down, this in fact helps the domestic economy, because it frees up money for consumption that's otherwise spent on imports. Why would I spend more money because my heating bill is going up? My heating bill's going up, I'd better buy that refrigerator now.
Well, it gives you more pocket money, disposable income.
Yeah, as it's going down.
Yes,
they want the prices to go up.
Yeah,
and they think this will cause people to, in this virtuous cycle, oh, prices are going up. No, it means I have less money, and what I can spend on actual domestically produced or domestic economic activity is going down, and it's completely confusing.
To put it mildly.
Confusing cause and effect and everything, to put it mildly. Yeah.
Well, Scott, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Come on, we have to clink our teacups.
Okay.
All right. Let's look and smile at the camera like they used to do in the Quinn Martin productions. Okay, you ready?
We have
Where's your teacup?
Oh, yeah.